Hello, everybody. Welcome to your UFC 282 post show. I am John Pollock, and joining me, the man who loves himself a great split draw. He is Eric Marcotte, who is here with us. Eric, how are you?
I am doing well. Like you said, I'm just so ecstatic from that split draw. I haven't been able to sleep. It's the best thing for the entire sport, really.
Well, I guess you're in better spirits than Magomed Ankalaev after that decision was read, which we will discuss in great detail. This was quite the weekend when it comes to judges' scorecards that were debatable, to say the very least, between Bellator on Friday night. Did you get to see Bellator on Friday?
I did watch Bellator on Friday, and I will say the worst scorecard of the entire weekend was certainly turned in on that Bellator show. Although I think we're going to spend probably 80% of this entire show just talking about judging. But we'll start off with the Bellator main event.
Yeah, well, I think it does kind of set the table for Saturday's UFC card, because you had one judge in Douglas Crosby who turned in a card on Friday's Bellator 289 event for the main event between Raufeon Stots and Danny Sabatello, which Stots won by split decision, with judges Eric Colon and Brian Miner scoring at 48-47 for Raufeon Stots. Doug Crosby scored at 50-45 for Danny Sabatello. And this was a card that let's defer to MMADecisions.com that said in the history of their database, there has never been a card of 50-45 for the loser of the fight. Doug Crosby saw all 5 rounds for Danny Sabatello. Now, I just watched this fight earlier today. I thought that, and I might have been, I thought that Stotts won 3 rounds, and then I gave him a 4th round. I had him winning all but the first round. I can see certain arguments towards rounds. It seemed that, 48-47 Stotts was a pretty common card that I saw. Can't say I've seen any more than one card of 50-45, though, for Danny Sabatello today.
No, I had it 48-47 for Stotts, and I mean, Sabatello had long periods in which you could say he was in the advantageous position with his grappling, but the thing was, he was
Did
doing
nothing.
no damage while attempting no submission. So according to the scoring criteria, that shouldn't count for anything really. And on 2 of the 3 scorecards, that was reflected. On one of them, not so much.
Yeah, I mean, this was when they put up the stats at the end and you had Stotts like greatly outlanding him throughout the fight, but the control time was like over 10 minutes for Sabatello. But when I say he did nothing with these positions, like that's not hyperbole. Like, he was just holding and positional control, but like you've got the criteria that, like, cage control is when all other criteria are absolutely even, of effective striking, effective submissions, and then you go to aggression if you need to, and then it is control. And in all of these rounds, it was outside of the first. I mean, I saw Stotts, like, he did damage. It wasn't like overwhelming amounts, but even in that final round where he's being held and he's just dropping these elbows to the point that he like cuts the side of Sabatello's head. The fact that you can get to 5 rounds for Danny Sabatello is just mind-boggling to me. And Doug Crosby is certainly a judge whose his resume precedes him. He has been a very highly scrutinized judge who still is used for high-profile fights, including the Paddy Pimblett fight against Jared Gordon on Saturday, where he was one of the judges that we're going to talk about a lot of these scorecards, but not only scoring it for Paddy Pimblett, which I don't think is crazy. It's crazy, but not crazy. Scoring the first round for Paddy Pimblett is crazy times 8. Okay, I don't know how you get to a 10-9 Jared Gordon scorecard. So not a great weekend for Doug Crosby and his scorecards in these 2 fights.
No, not a good look at all for him. And let's not forget, this is a time in which the UFC and MMA as a whole is being heavily scrutinized for betting scandals. And when you get scorecards like that, you're going to get even more attention on it. So
Yeah,
not a good look.
yeah, I can go into this whole thing, but the fact that, like, judges, to me, you have to be able to defend your cards, and commissions don't They don't want these judges speaking publicly. They're not held to any kind of, public scrutiny or defense of a 50-45 for the losing fighter. And to me, it's just like these things continually happen. And I'm sometimes sympathetic towards the judging because it's often we complain when there's an awful decision, but never talk about great decisions that get handed down. But when you see a consistency like this, and, it should be expected that you're getting an accurate score that is within a certain range, that we can see close rounds. You understand that there is a chance that it goes the other way. I think everyone understands that about fighting. But when there's such a discrepancy, and like the first round of Jared Gordon and Paddy Pimblett, I think that's a scorecard that you really need to defend if you are scoring it the other way, when it just feels like I watched a completely different round than two of the three judges did.
Yeah, I feel like I'm usually fairly easy on the judges, all things considered. I mean, I think a lot of people aren't completely educated to what the scoring criteria is in mixed martial arts, as proved on UFC broadcasts, even when you have
Yep.
great fighters like Dominic Cruz, who clearly do not know how a fight is scored. And that obviously goes for the fan base, who's educated largely through the commentators and fighters as well. That being said, some of these recent scorecards are like you can't when you look at the criteria, you cannot see how you'd arrive at the conclusion of, for example, 50-45 for Danny Sabatello, right? And it's under a microscope when these scorecards get turned in like that, and on the grand stage of a UFC pay-per-view, all the more so.
Well, we're going to get into UFC 282. I'm sure this topic will arise in several of these fights, but they announced 18,455 with a gate of 4.4 million at the T-Mobile Arena for the card that lost its main event after Yuri Prohaska was out with a devastating shoulder injury, and Glover Teixeira, who looked to be the odd man out. And by the end of tonight, I mean, this guy gifted with another opportunity, and he got to pass the hot potato over to Anthony Smith, who now becomes the odd man out. But yes, we had a full house here at the T-Mobile Arena, and our new main event of Jan Blachowicz against Magomed Ankalaev, who was a heavy favorite coming into this fight. And early on in this fight, we saw, I thought, a very close first round. Blachowicz was connecting, and you saw some swelling around the eye of Ankalaev. Ankalaev continuing as well with front kicks. I thought this was a very close round, and at the end of it, I scored the first round for Ankalaev. How did you go in the first? Because I thought this was one of the debated rounds that I think you could go either way if you wanted to.
I scored the opening round for Ankalaev as well. It was a very close round. There wasn't a lot of activity or significant moments from either fighter, but I thought the front kicks to the body in particular from Ankalaev may have been the difference maker in this one, and I scored the round for him.
The second round, Jan Blachowicz really starts to open up with his leg kicks, and these were very, very effective for Jan Blachowicz. As I'm pulling it up here, throughout the fight, Blachowicz would land 25 of 29 leg kicks. So this really took off in the second round. He's going after the left leg, and at one point, you see Ankalaev just start to be hopping on his leg, really outlining the damage that these leg kicks are doing to him, and nearly loses his balance, has to switch up his stance to orthodox, and this continues into the third, where now Blachowicz is going after the other leg of Ankalaev, and then it's that leg that he's having problems with. So Ankalaev is just not having any answer for these, and his corner would eventually get into him and say, why are you just standing in front of him like this? And so midway through the third, he starts to put on a lot more forward pressure to try and offset the kicks and not give Blachowicz the chance. But Blachowicz is also stopping all of Ankalaev's takedowns up until this point. So I thought the second and third were Blachowicz rounds. Apparently, some saw the third round for Magomed Ankalaev, which was one that I really did not possibly understand, but Derek Cleary did score it for Ankalaev in the third. Can I assume you did not score round three for Ankalaev?
No, I did not. Ankalaev did very good work throughout the round, but at the end of the day, it was the damage from those leg kicks from Blachowicz that were the story of the round. It was the most damaging moment. It was the most significant moments. And I do think that it's hard to justify a scorecard for Ankalaev when you take that into account. So I had Blachowicz up on scorecards going into round 4.
Okay, so you and I had the same scorecards going into the championship rounds, 2-1 for Blachowicz. Round 4 is when Ankalaev starts to do a lot of clinch work, and he gets Blachowicz off the fence and gets his takedown, and then goes to the back. He's working in half guard, dropping elbows. Very good round for Ankalaev to get back into things. So, I had it even going into the 5th, and then the 5th was a pretty dominant round for Ankalaev, where Blachowicz goes down to his back pretty early in the round, and you don't know if he injured himself in some moment or was caught, but he's on his back, and Ankalaev uses it for all it's worth. The crowd is not too entertained by this strategy, nor was Dana White, it turned out, who later just said, I was zoning out after the 3rd round in this fight. He just thought this was an awful fight. And so he traps Blachowicz. He's dropping strikes. It's Blachowicz is covering up at one point. To me, it was on the fence of like 10-8 territory, but I didn't quite go there. I had it 10-9 for Ankalaev. So after this fight, I had it 48-47 for Magomed Ankalaev. Your scorecard, Eric, was?
I had the exact same scorecard with all of the same rounds as yourself. I do think a 10-8 for Ankalaev in the final round is completely fair, but I didn't go that way personally.
Yeah, if you wanted to, you could. And for me, it was, okay, well, my scorecard, it's how much did Ankalaev win if you're going 10-9 or 10-8. So 48-47s from both of us. None of us had a 50-45?
No, neither of us did. How strange.
Stunning. So we go to the judges' scorecards. 48-47, Blachowicz. It's like, that's, it's like, there you go to the first round. It's like, the first round was close. I don't agree with that, but that's probably your route to a 48-47 Blachowicz card. 48-46 for Ankalaev, which would mean a 10-8 round in there. And then we go to the final scorecard. 47-47, rendering this a split draw. Now, the hidden gem of this all is that as they're reading the scorecards, Jan Blachowicz is there, and he's gesturing towards the assumed winner, Ankalaev. Like, he's got his arm out. He is ready to acknowledge the new light heavyweight champion, and then they read it's a split draw. And, dude, you have never heard a more honest post-fight interview than when Jan Blachowicz is acknowledging that, I don't know if I lost that fight. I definitely didn't win. And he's just explaining, I don't know. My head got rattled in that fight. I don't know. Please don't put me on the spot here. I don't want to say something that's going to mess up my chances here. Then they go to interview Ankalaev, and through his interpreter is furious, cannot fathom losing this fight, and through the interpreter stating he doesn't know if he wants to fight here again, which was later clarified by Ankalaev. He doesn't know if he wants to fight in Las Vegas again because of the judges, but will fight in the UFC. Not realizing these judges are not tied to Las Vegas. These are judges that can go anywhere, as Doug Crosby can tell you. He can be in Connecticut one night and Nevada the next. So I don't know about that argument, but he was furious. And then Jan comes over and says, yeah, he's right. Give him the belt. Like, you've never heard a more defeated man than Jan Blachowicz here in this post-fight interview, just saying, you're right. I give him the belt. And we're leaving. I don't know how you could have any clamoring for a rematch between these two when you have one that's pretty much saying, yeah, I lost. Like, this is silly. Let's move on. I'm done. And that's how things ended. And Dana White afterwards, he hated this fight. I thought he was more negative on this fight than it truly warranted, but he's going in a totally different direction, stating that next month it will be Glover Teixeira against Jamal Hill at UFC 283 for the vacant title. And for those of you watching ESPN Plus, you got to see analyst Anthony Smith / Jamal Hill's opponent in March find out in real time that his fight is off. You have no fight now coming up, and your opponent is now fighting for the title, and you have to figure this out on the air. Some truly amazing theater in the UFC where communication is just not even on the list of priorities.
Oh, so much drama attached to this one fight. Yeah, Dana White went scorched earth on this one. I didn't think it was that bad. I didn't think it was
Neither
great.
did
I
I.
didn't think
Like,
it was a great fight. But
I'm not going to say this was the fight of the night by any stretch, but God, I have seen so much worse than this fight. I mean, it was.
yeah, I mean, there was some
God.
drama with the leg kicks, and then Ankalaev fighting with basically no legs. There is something to it. As far as the decision it was scored, I actually thought all the scorecards were fair, with the exception of giving
The third.
Ankalaev the third round. That's completely
The,
out
the
there.
draw I can get to, because you're essentially 2 and 3, no one's arguing. Round 4 and 5, no one's arguing for Ankalaev. The only argument is if you go 10-9, 10-8. So it comes down to a close first round, and that's where you say you have to be able to accept either way. So if you're going 1-2-3 for Jan and the 10-8 in the fifth, that's how you get to a draw. I see that as a much more defensible scorecard than round 3 for Ankalaev, which I just don't see a path to that scorecard. So you're right. I see that as the more egregious score than the draw. I think the draw, it's disappointing because you get this outcome that leaves the title vacant. But yeah, to me, it's much tougher to defend that third round.
Yeah, I mean, I went back, and so when the decision was read, I was shocked, admittedly, because I thought Ankalaev won with clarity. I did go back to watch the first round after I saw that all three judges were in agreement that Blachowicz won that first round. So I was like, okay, clearly I was missing something here. And I went back, and I still scored it for Ankalaev, but it was a very close round. You could have went either way without much argument. So completely fair.
It's amazing that we got agreement across all three judges for round 1, but a dissent on round 3. Like, that to me is fascinating.
Very strange. And in the end, it is a disappointing result to a disappointing fight, and it leaves this division in an even stranger place when we're looking at Glover Teixeira versus Jamal Hill for the next title shot. I mean,
This light heavyweight division is it just seems it's at a rough post John Jones era, I will say.
The John Jones era was pretty rough too towards the end.
At least this event took place in the city it was advertised to in December. Unlike our 2018 let's pack up and move to LA event. But they're making the decision to go to Glover Teixeira and Jamal Hill. I can understand that there is not a high clamoring for this rematch, that they wanted to just move on with this division, and Ankalaev and Blachowicz is not going to mean a thing in Brazil, and they're going with, now you have Glover Teixeira and Deiveson Figueiredo on this card in January. It sucks for Anthony Smith, but this is the power the UFC has, that they are just going, hey, we want to fight for this date. Who's around? And we're going to make it, whether it is fair to all parties involved. I would say Ankalaev does feel as though he is, a guy that, justifiably, I think, upset with this decision, and we will see what 2023 holds for him if he fights for the title. One would think he would be there, but might have to take another fight now in the interim before he gets back to a championship opportunity.
This is true, and from Dana White's reaction, it's unlikely to be the rematch of Jan Blachowicz, but nonetheless, I don't know. This entire division's just in a strange situation where everyone from the top-ranked fighter to the 15th ranked fighter kind of feels like they're on the exact same level, and anything can happen with any combination of these guys. So when we're talking about like deserving or undeserving title shots, it's like I don't feel too strongly about much of anything. But Magomed Ankalaev does feel like he should be fighting for a title in his next bout, despite the disappointing outcome here.
Yeah. Worth noting in the fifth round from the UFC stats here is that Ankalaev landed 18 of 37 strikes. Blachowicz 0 for 2 in round number 5, which compares to his 1 strike landed in the 4th round. So, I mean, Jan Blachowicz largely just completely shut down in the championship rounds.
And it was a bad performance from Jan in the championship rounds. And of course, he did not train for a 5-round fight. Keep this in mind. But I mean, he was fighting a man with no legs going into the championship rounds. Everybody was convinced this man was moments away from a stoppage heading into round 4. And he failed to do anything for the rest of the fight. So I think a very disappointing final 10 minutes to this one for Jan Blachowicz, a man who's fought 5 rounds on multiple occasions in the past.
Yes, and Ankalaev did state afterwards as well. His knee was compromised, but didn't go into further detail there, whether that was a result of the leg kicks or something that was pre-existing. But that was our main event, so we come out with, once again, Vacant will go into 2023 as your light heavyweight champion. But let's discuss Paddy Pimblett and Jared Gordon at lightweight. Paddy Pimblett, quite the week that Paddy had. Very lots of drama on the Paddy Pimblett side, and then comes in, and no shortage of it in this fight. So we start off, and dude, Jared Gordon cannot miss in this first round with his left hooks. He's then mixing in rights, goes back to the left hand, and then Pimblett starts to land using leg kicks as Gordon changes his stance, and then Gordon is on top in his guard as the round ends, but it was clearly the left hooks to me that were the difference in this round. The second, a much closer round, Pimblett is working for a choke, and then Gordon goes for a takedown but loses it, and we see another left hook when Pimblett connects with a right and an uppercut. And as Pimblett gets out of the clinch, he has a sequence of kicks and punches, and there's an eye poke as well to Gordon. Close round after two. You could certainly give this round to Pimblett if you wanted to. And then the third round, it was a tough round to score because there was very little damage. This was kind of like one of those Danny Sabatello rounds where Gordon clinched him and controlled him against the fence, but did not inflict a whole lot of damage. Pimblett eventually circled off of the fence, and then Gordon got another takedown and slid off the back towards the end. So the argument I heard afterwards was, well, Jared Gordon did not do a whole lot in the third round. Neither did Pimblett. I think this is one where, again, a 29-28 card for Pimblett is one that I disagree with. I went with Gordon in these two rounds, but I can buy a 29-28 round for Pimblett. Or fight for Pimblett. The first round for Paddy Pimblett blows my mind. I don't get that one at all. All three judges scoring it 29-28, but the big focus was that referees Ron McCarthy and Doug Crosby scoring the first round for Paddy Pimblett, and that I just could not believe that one. So Paddy Pimblett. This man is either the most delusional fighter or the most self-aware because, dude, this guy gets on the mic. Was that the fight of the night or what? And he's just, he totally owned this. And part of me appreciated how he handled this instead of it was of course I won this fight. It was just playing in as the ultimate heel to this audience. And there you go. There was a great video where they're shooting, Dana White is by the Barstool guys who have the sponsorship with Paddy Pimblett, and they read the scorecards, and dude, the stunned looks in the faces of everybody around is that what a gift that was just given to Paddy Pimblett here, because I don't think anybody that was anticipating these scorecards, maybe Paddy Pimblett included, thought this was going his way. And as I'm hearing Bruce Buffer read the cards, and before he says the winner, you see him gesture towards Pimblett. I'm like, you're kidding me. But there you go. Paddy Pimblett gets the win. And, Eric, this is a deep division. And, he is going to be thrown in there with the Lions at lightweight with a win coming out of this. And I think this is certainly in the long term. I think people are going to assess what is the ceiling for Paddy Pimblett, and is he ready for more qualified lightweights above the Jared Gordon level?
So I'm trying to think where to start here.
I put a lot out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of threads that I can start with. I'm not sure which one to pick up first. I guess I'll start with the scoring and say that my thoughts on the bout were exactly the same as yours. It kind of reminded me of the Petr Yan Sean O'Malley fight in the sense that I can see a scorecard for Pimblett. I don't think it's unjustifiable. Yet at the same time, I didn't score it that way, and I didn't really see anyone else.
Tough. It's tough, especially three of them getting to that scorecard when it seems that, I would imagine if you were with a group of 10 people, it's how many of those 10 are going to have a 29-28 card? What are the odds of that happening? The probability of all three getting the 29-28 and then two of the judges having the first for him, just all those things coming together was hard to fathom.
As far as the next level of competition for him is concerned, it's very tough to say what his ceiling is. I don't look at Jared Gordon as one of the guys approaching the rankings at lightweight. And I think most people thought Jared Gordon won this fight. Pimblett's been damaged in pretty much all of his UFC fights leading up to this one. He's not a prospect either. This is a guy who's been fighting for quite a while now. He has a lot of experience. I don't really look at him as a guy on the way up, but more as an established fighter at this point. You know what you're going to get with him.
This was his 23rd. This was his 23rd pro fight. I mean, only 4th in the UFC. But you're right. Like, this is not somebody that's just still in the early stages of their career. And I go back, Eric, to when I was in high school, okay? And I was in grade 12 math. And I really struggled that year. Math and me did not get along. And I went into that final exam and I pretty much needed to hit a home run to pass this course. So I did the exam and I wasn't even given my percentage afterwards. The teacher told me, John, are you going to be continuing math next year in your last year of high school? I said, no, it's optional. I am not taking math next year. She was like, okay, I'm going to pass you with the promise that you're not going to continue because you will not do well by me awarding you here to go to the next level. So I feel that Paddy Pimblett really needed a grade 12 Miss Havaris moment where he wins this fight, but he is now in the deeper end of the lightweight division because of this win, and I don't know if he is ready for that.
I mean, if the UFC are desperately trying to get this man ranked, the 15th ranked lightweight is currently Tony Ferguson. So there is a path to the rankings for Pimblett, but I don't even.
You have that big card in London
fight,
that I would assume they are going to want him to turn around in March for the London card.
I mean, if you think about the actual top lightweights, I'm talking about not even the champion. Let's just talk about the hitters. Let's talk about Dustin Poirier. Let's talk about Michael Chandler, Justin Gaethje, Charles Oliveira,
Arman Tsarukyan. Okay, even if you're going down the rankings,
Mateusz Gamrot, Beneil Dariush, name the person. It doesn't seem like it would be a competitive fight. So perhaps that's not the direction you should look at with Paddy Pimblett. Maybe you should just keep trying to find entertaining fights for the guy and try to grow his popularity. He already seems like he's caught on with a lot of people. This may have not been a good week for his popularity, but just in general, he felt like the guy with the most eyes on him going into this card. And he can become a legitimate fight night headlining type of act, even if he's never a genuine contender. So there's still ways you can build him up without feeding him to the dogs that will inevitably tear him down.
Okay, here's my one. Just for the sheer entertainment of the promotion. Paddy Pimblett versus Renato Moicano.
Oh my God. Okay, so first off, Renato Moicano would destroy this guy in a fight, so I don't know.
That's fine. That's fine. Let's get the most out of this. This is about Moicano now, okay?
I'm with you. I love Renato Moicano. This guy.
How often do you watch the Countdown show? Okay, because me, it's rarely. I would watch that Countdown special for those two. So,
he is a charismatic machine. Renato Moicano is. I love it. You've sold me on it. This is what I want to see next now. As much as Moicano is angling for a fight with Conor McGregor, maybe Pimblett's a bit more realistic.
It was funny because afterwards they announced that Dricus, Plessis, and Darren Till was the fight of the night, and everyone who got a finish on this card, which was every fight except for the top two, got $50,000 bonuses. Dana White was very generous on Saturday. So that means Paddy Pimblett, the only winner to not get a disclosed bonus.
Yeah, that must be a record of some sort. Not a prestige that surely it never happened before in the UFC. The only winner to not get a bonus on the entire card. Wow.
Then we go on to Santiago Ponzinibbio against Alex Morono, who was replacing Robbie Lawler on 5 days' notice, and therefore this was a 180-pound catchweight fight. And Morono, credit to this guy, he's on a 4-fight win streak and takes this fight on very, very short notice. And I thought won the first round here. You had Ponzinibbio going for the body, mixing in leg kicks, but then it was Morono landing with a right hand over the top, and then a spinning back fist from Ponzinibbio, but it's Morono who drops him at the end of the round to end big. Second round, it's Morono drops him briefly, and then Ponzinibbio connects with a right hand, goes to the leg with a kick, and then he's landing more. And it was a close round in the second. I leaned towards Ponzinibbio in the second, but his corner did not. His corner told him, dude, you're down 2 rounds. You've got to finish him. So Ponzinibbio came out in the third, and Morono early wobbles him, follows with a right, and you're thinking this is it for Ponzinibbio, but he comes back, stuns Morono with a right hand, knocks him down with a follow-up, and then lands another big shot on top. The replay of this finish, he connects with this right hand, and dude, Alex Morono's face like contorts. It's like his jaw has been readjusted by this fist, and he goes down, and it is stopped at 2:29 of the third round. I cannot recall a fighter that was more furious with a stoppage than Alex Morono towards Jason Herzog. Dude, this guy was pissed in the cage to the point that Dana White had to get into the cage to calm him down, and later said he was giving Morono his win bonus on top of his show money. So Dana was just, the money was just flying on Saturday night. So there you go. Turning the whole fighter pay issue around in one night is Dana White.
Yes, Dana White's the hero that the MMA world has just desperately needed for all these years, saving the fighters from Dana White.
That's it. So it turns out they can afford to give someone his whole money. It doesn't, the operation is not going to break down just because they pay the guys one flat fee at the end of it. Imagine going into your job and knowing, well, if I have a good day, I'm going to make this amount, but if I have a rough day, I'm making half of this today.
Well, don't get ahead of yourself yet, John. There's still a chance the UFC will fold in the next week or so, but
that's right.
For some reason, I don't think that'll be the case.
All these performance bonuses, it's going to put them in the red this year. But yeah, a big win for Santiago Ponzinibbio, who has been hampered by a lot of injuries, didn't fight in 2019 or 2020, and he was coming off split decision losses to Jeff Neal last year, and then Michel Pereira back in May. So a much needed win for him in the UFC. Well, I would say welterweight division, but this is really catchweight that he fought at.
Ponzinibbio always feels like a bit of a what if, because right before he went away for that extended period of time, he looked so good. And when he came back, it was clear that age and inactivity had taken their toll on him by that point. And he's had a bit of a roller coaster run since coming back. There have been some really entertaining fights, some rough losses, and this was really his first statement win in that time. I actually didn't think he looked very good for the majority of the fight. I thought he was very inactive and allowing Morono to get the better of their exchanges, but getting rocked in that final round kind of woke him up, and he just immediately surged forward with a big combination of right hands that led to the pretty brutal finish. I'm not sure it was as questionable of a stoppage as Brandon Morono may have thought in the moment.
I didn't see any debate over this, but man, this guy was just furious afterwards. So anyway, was at least financially taken care of for this fight. Dricus du Plessis taking on Darren Till. Darren Till, another guy very much at a crossroads as he came into this fight, losing 4 of his last 5, and he's been 1-2 since returning to middleweight, coming off losses to Robert Whittaker and then submitted by Derek Brunson after that. So he has not fought in over a year at this point. Du Plessis 3-0 in the UFC and last fought against Brad Tavares with a decision win in July at UFC 276. The first round, I didn't think Till was getting out of this round. Du Plessis got a takedown, and he just used Darren Till's head as a punching bag. And it was the most bizarre thing because as Till continually got hit, he was not working to escape. He was not trying to block. He was just communicating with referee Mark Smith. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Bam, bam, bam. He's just eating these shots. It was something like 60-6 was the strike differential in this first round. Eventually, Till escapes, and he goes for a guillotine, losing it, and does at least end the round, landing some strikes. But this, to me, was enough for a 10-8 round for Du Plessis, as he just dominated the first round, but also expended a ton of energy. So the second round begins, and Till's left eye is a mess from all the strikes he took, and Till clips him, lands an elbow, drills him with a knee, so Du Plessis takes him down. Darren Till's takedown defense is horrendous.
It was like prime Carlos Condit levels here. Like anything du Plessis tried, even when he was exhausted, was successful. It was rough.
It's a major hole in his game, and fighting at this level, it's a hole that you are not going to navigate these waters unless you significantly shore up. And again, like Paddy Pimblett, like this is not a, he is young in relative terms, but in terms of career development, like this is somebody that is, this is a guy that has had 23 fights prior to this already. So anyway, Till has a good round in the second. I think most scored it for him. And then in the third round, there's a takedown by Du Plessis, gets to mount, and Till just gives up his back and gets choked out. He taps at 2:43 of the third round. Afterwards, Till, I guess, was communicating that he thought he tore his ACL. That has not been confirmed. That would be a major injury for Till to have to undergo now if he in fact tore it. But Du Plessis gets the win here. I thought he looked like the much superior fighter than Darren Till. And Dana White stated afterwards that, Darren Till's stock hasn't gone down at all. He's got the fight of the night. But the fact is, this dude has now lost 5 of 6. And I can't say that this was a ringing performance for Darren Till for the most optimistic fan of Darren Till.
Even the win in that stretch against Kelvin Gastelum was a fight in which, nothing really happened in that fight. He won based on being slightly more active. And his win before that, all those years ago, was a win against Stephen Thompson that not many people thought he won. So I can't say I've seen much impressive performances from Darren Till since the Donald Cerrone fight, which seems like a lifetime ago at this point. I don't know what's next for him, especially if he's facing another lengthy injury.
Yeah, a torn ACL, like he might not fight for a year if that was the case. So, he's 29 years of age. So it's like he's got some youth on his side, but man, he's got some miles on him. And, the wrestling is a major problem at any weight class at this level in the UFC. Then we had, as Cody Safdie dubbed it, the battle of the flat earther versus the round earther. Bryce Mitchell against Ilia Topuria, both undefeated. Mitchell with a record of 15-0, Topuria 12-0 in the UFC featherweight division. And man, Ilia Topuria was great in this fight. Early on, he's just swinging and working in calf kicks, using his jab. Mitchell goes for the body. He ends up 0 for 4 on takedowns in the first round, finally gets one near the end, and Topuria wins the first round. The second, Mitchell gets his best combo of the fight, ending with a head kick, but then Topuria knocks him down, gets to side control, landing more big shots, and then boom, he just ragdolls Mitchell to the mat and just... Like, dude, you have never seen a man just control another with such ease. It was just, I am going to put you into the submission and you are going to just lie here and take it. He applies this arm triangle and tries to roll for the leg lock as the round ends. And then it's the Sorry, did this end in the second? This ended in the second. I've got my notes mixed up here. When he gets the arm triangle, that's when he gets the submission here at 3:10 of the second round. Ilia Topuria, who I just thought looked awesome in this fight.
Yeah, so going into this card, this was honestly the only bout on paper that I was really excited about. Just stylistically, these two fighters are both undefeated. I think Bryce Mitchell they technically uncovered that he had a loss because the Ultimate Fighter semifinals bout against Brad Katona is technically a legal 3-round bout or something. Whatever.
Okay.
All of Mitchell's UFC fights, he's looked fantastic, and his last one was a dominant win against Edson Barboza, where he showcased some solid abilities on the feet as well, but Topuria didn't care. He was just going in there throwing bombs. He had no respect for Mitchell's striking ability. He had no respect for his ground game, and he just demolished him here. It was an amazing performance, and Topuria is a really entertaining fighter. I mean, we can talk about his abilities. Like, obviously, he's very skilled, but this guy is super entertaining every time he gets in there. He's becoming a fighter to watch night in and night out.
Yeah, Topuria came into this fight ranked 14th. Bryce Mitchell was 9th. And then Topuria said he would like a title fight in his next fight. And if not, he wants to fight in Spain. I don't think either of those are going to happen, but I can guarantee you this man is not fighting for the title next. But hey, shoot your shot, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, why not? What the next featherweight title fight is like Josh Emmett versus Arnold Allen or something for the interim title? Isn't that
That's
a
right.
thing? I mean, anyone can fight for these things these days. No, Topuria, he is an awesome fighter. He has a ton of potential. I don't think he's going to get what he wants next. I think he called out Brian Ortega too, who is currently injured, as far as I know. So I'm not sure that's happening. But maybe a fight against the likes of Max Holloway. Is that impossible? I don't know. Calvin Kattar, the Korean Zombie. Who knows? Tons of fun options for him.
Those are options. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Max Holloway will be very interesting to see how he is handled in this featherweight division. Then we go into the prelims, and a lot of focus on Raul Rosas Jr., who is the youngest fighter in UFC history. He won on Dana White's Contender Series on the previous season when he was 17. He has now turned 18 years old. So, I mean, he's getting up there.
He's a man now.
Yes. And taking on Jay Perrin at bantamweight. Now, I have a lot of proceed with caution vibes with Raul Rosas Jr. He looked very good in this fight, but he is somebody that if you do, as my friend John Ramdeen dubbed it, the Sherdog test, when you go down this man's record and then you click on the opponents that he has fought, this is a guy that, yes, he had a 6-0 record coming in here, but he has certainly fought some guys that are not exactly demonstrating world beater here, but it remains to be seen. He passed this test, but again, this is Jay Perrin. So, but I think the hype is gigantic on this kid, and he very much is a kid at 18 years of age. He comes in, lifts him for the takedown, takes Perrin's back, gets the hooks in, flattens him out, tries for the rear naked choke, but Perrin breaks free, then reapplies it, getting the choke and submitting Perrin at 244 of the first round. So you can certainly not criticize this performance on a major stage by Raul Rosas Jr., but this is, you have to, I think, be cautious of someone that is this young in their career and in life, and you're competing at the UFC, and you just don't want to see that development messed up. And he is going to be somebody that when someone comes in like this, like Eric, we've seen plenty of guys in this position and they get pushed so fast and they inevitably hit that roadblock, and it can be very detrimental to your potential when you're put in the fast lane so early.
Yeah, I mean, his performance was solid, very impressive that he was able to handle the pressure as he did in his first UFC fight, and at that age. He is undefeated. As you said, the opponent's not anything to write home about. I don't think you can gauge too much about what his ceiling is right now from these performances, nor can I say where his floor would be, so to speak. It's too hard to say right now.
Yeah, it's like I'm not taking a strong stance either way, exactly. But there will be people that come out of this and look at this as like this next future superstar. It's like, let's cool it. Like that's.
I mean, it's always the same thing. Anyone under the age of like 23, this is going to be the person who's going to beat John Jones' youngest champion record, and it's pretty much never going to be the case. That being said, I will say this crowd, they knew who this guy was.
Totally.
And they treated him like perhaps the biggest star on this card, aside from maybe Pimblett. Like, he got a great reaction.
I thought these two were the biggest stars on this show. And to the other point, like if Raul Rosas Jr. can develop, this guy could be a major star one day, especially for Mexico. He's got a lot of intangibles that are going to make him very appealing as a star, but it's very difficult because you can't control outcomes, and you can't necessarily protect guys. So we will see how this fighter is handled next year, as well as he marches towards age 19.
Hey, it's a tough division for him. He fights at bantamweights, but there's no shortage of fun fights there, and there's a lot of name value too. So you can put this guy in a somewhat prominent spot if you're trying to grow his popularity.
How does it feel to be part of the club now, Eric, where you're finally talking about fighters that are actually younger than you?
You know what? It feels good. I feel like I can speak with just so much more authority, as I'm just so much more experienced in life.
Old man Erik here. Jairzinho Rozenstruik and Chris Daukaus. Not a whole lot to say about this one. Daukaus had one good moment. He connected with a right hand, and Rozenstruik unloaded with him with the jab from hell, and then a knee, sending Daukaus down, and then nailed him with another. And dude, Daukaus is down. This thing is waved off in 23 seconds. Daukaus not playing the Alex Morono. What? How could you stop it so early? Daukaus was like, yeah, I'm done. And that was it. Rozenstruik, who had lost 3 of 4, bounces back here with a win in pretty impressive fashion here. But this is like Rozenstruik. He's great if it ends early, and sometimes if it goes longer than that, that's when he can fall apart. But this was this was a strong win for him, but a very quick one.
I couldn't believe Daukaus' strategy here. He rushed Rozenstruik like he was Francis Ngannou. It was a completely insane strategy against one of the most powerful and skilled counter strikers in the entire division. And you immediately saw why no one would ever do this, because he just got knocked out right away. Well, win for Rozenstruik. I don't know what more to say about this one. It was kind of funny.
That it was, yes. It was not a gift to Jairzinho Rozenstruik from Chris Daukaus right around Christmas time. Edmen Shahbazyan, who we have not seen since November of last year. So he was, similar to what we were just talking about. Like, here was a young prospect that they were just catapulting, and suddenly he's headlining a fight night card against Derek Brunson and loses to Brunson, loses to Jack Hermanson, and then loses to Nasruddin Imavov. So suddenly he's got his back against the wall, took a year off, which I think is going to benefit him significantly, of retooling himself, came back here. He's put on some size at middleweight and comes into the first round against Dalcha Lungiambula at 185 pounds. And Shahbazyan's going to the body using front kicks, and then Lungiambula shoots for a takedown, can't get it. Second round, Shahbazyan is continuing with kicks to the body, circles, and then gets drilled with a knee in the final minute. And dude, Shahbazyan just unloads everything he has. He is just landing strike after strike, mixes in some hammer fists, and was just leaving everything out there. I don't know if this guy would have had anything left for the third round. Didn't need it because Chris Taioni, the referee, stopped it at 4:41 of the second round. So Shahbazyan gets his first win in 3 years.
When you say it like that, wow, 3 years. I guess so. That fight against Derek Brunson was a while ago now, but yeah, he was a guy who was hot-shotted. He looked really impressive throughout his run to the middleweight rankings, and then there was a series of tough losses there. To come back with this performance, I'm not really sure. Like, Dalcha Lungiambula, he's a dangerous fighter, but he's not quite on the level of the opponents that beat Shahbazyan during that 3-fight skid. So he looked good, but it's tough to be like, oh, he's back. He's going to be fighting top contenders on main cards again. And let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Future champion.
Back on track.
The future. We're going to have Raul Rosas Jr., Edmen Shahbazyan, Paddy Pimblett. I mean, here is your Mount Rushmore for 2024 right there.
The future is here, and also Glover Teixeira at 47 years of age, or however old he is now.
Oh my goodness, what shade you're throwing the poor man's way. Chris Curtis against Joaquin Buckley, another middleweight fight. Curtis was kind of slowing down as the first round progressed, and then Buckley is landing more, but he took a brutal shot early in this round. I favored Curtis in the first round because of that. In the second, Buckley was having like a much more measured performance, very effective with his output, landed with a clean left. It was like he, to me, had like figured out his game plan. Everything was going well, and boom, Curtis drops him with a left hand, and it all goes out the window. Hammer fists him for the finish, for the knockout at 2:49 of the second round. Joaquin Buckley. Fortunately, things were going until they weren't.
That seems to be how most of his fights go, one way or the other. Always an entertaining fighter. I thought this was actually a pretty one-sided fight in Buckley's favor ahead of the finish. The output from Curtis was very low. I didn't think he was getting much done offensively. I thought Buckley looked fantastic, and then he got knocked out. So another big KO win for Chris Curtis. A big result for him after a really rough loss in his last one against Jack Hermanson, where he was losing his mind in frustration because Hermanson was circling, and that's something he wasn't quite ready to contend with at the time. But nice for Curtis to get back on track with a knockout like this. He's been really entertaining since he came back, or made his UFC debut, I should say.
And then the early prelims, we had 3 fights. Billy Quarantillo versus Alexander Hernandez, who at one point was like a lightweight to watch. And then
at one point he was the future.
But the present, some of the shine has come off Alexander Hernandez. So he's cutting down to featherweight for this fight and starting anew. And in the first round, Hernandez is looking good. He's like good speed on him. He's letting his hands go after they separate, got a takedown, and cuts open Quarantillo with an elbow. And they show the slow motion camera where you just see his head explode. Daniel Cormier is just getting way too excited off of this replay. And in the second round, Quarantillo jumps with a kick and gives up the position to Hernandez. But then Quarantillo is shutting down takedowns, starting to land strikes with an uppercut, and then takes Hernandez down. He's dropping a bunch of shots. He's warned about hitting him in the back of the head. So Quarantillo starts using uppercuts and elbows, and he's destroying Hernandez, mixes in some knees. A very strong finish here as Quarantillo gets the TKO win, 4:30 of the second round. So unfortunately for Alexander Hernandez, it is another loss at a new weight class. And this is somebody who maybe will be a trivia answer one day about a guy who does own a knockout victory over Beneil Dariush in 42 seconds. But unfortunately, that was almost 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, this ended up being a pretty typical Alexander Hernandez fight, despite the featherweight weight class here. I mean, he always looks fantastic to begin a fight, but around that midway point of round two, he typically begins to the gas, and Billy Q finished the fight not long after. Quarantillo, he's a fighter who can just fight at a pretty crazy pace for forever, seemingly. So, no surprises there, but a very impressive finish nonetheless.
TJ Brown against Eric Silva was a featherweight fight. TJ Brown is, during his entrance, John Anik notes that this has been a tough camp for TJ Brown because his coach, James Krause, was supposed to be in his corner, but for obvious reasons, he is not.
Very obvious reasons that we will
so
not
obvious
discuss.
We are not going to get into it on the broadcast and talk about it. But Dana White was asked about it afterwards, and boy, he gave just a stone cold answer that you do this kind of stuff, you're going to federal fucking prison.
Never any shortage of quotable quotes from Mr. Dana White.
I thought that TJ Brown won the first two rounds here. In the third, he put Silva on his back and eventually got an arm triangle for the submission win here. Decent fight, not like super memorable. It was a fight.
Yeah, not too much to say about this one. It pretty much came. I thought it was a competitive fight, but as it progressed, Silva began to gas, and Brown picked up the victory.
And our final fight to talk about, Cameron Saaiman versus Steven Kozlow in a bantamweight action. Saaiman, 21 years of age, fighting out of South Africa, and then won on the Contender Series back in August. So the first round, Kozlow gets a takedown. He's in half guard and tries to go for the back, loses it, and then Saaiman moves to the neck, and Kozlow ends up ending the round with strikes and gets the mount position. Second round, we see the major spot here was Saaiman, who is controlling the round, drills him with an illegal knee. And this one, like, there was no dispute about this one. This was just an awful knee, and Kozlow was just in another time zone for multiple minutes. And the point is deducted, but he continues. So I had this as a 9-9 round. And then in the third, Cameron Saaiman took it out of the judge's hands, a Dana White favorite. And he's landing big shots as Kozlow gets to his feet, connects with a big knee, and follows up with more strikes and ends it at 4:13 of the third round as Cameron Saaiman gets the victory.
Yeah, I thought this was a pretty fun fight to begin the night. Saaiman was definitely in need of a finish if he wanted to win the fight by the third round. It could have been a draw, of course, if we went to the scorecards, but a solid performance to begin what was a lengthy streak of finishes on this card.
Yeah, I mean, we were just getting finish after finish after finish. I'm thinking, man, we're going to have an early evening tonight. And then the last two fights, I mean, we got, that was the majority, and two highly discussed decisions as a result of it. But how did you feel overall about the UFC's final pay-per-view of the year? A bunch of changes to this card. I would imagine that as a pay-per-view, I'm sure this did not do giant business, which I'm sure the UFC was not in a giant hurry to book a rematch of this main event either.
Yeah, definitely mixed emotions about this one. Going into the card, this is perhaps the most unappealing lineup they've ever made people pay for. Like, there was negative star power on this one. Even the originally scheduled, like, ghosts of Robbie Lawler and Alexander Gustafsson would have added something in terms of name value, as sad as those fights may have turned out. As the card progressed, I thought like when you get 10 finishes in a row, some really dramatic ones too, you're gonna have a good time, even if it's not the most exciting matchups on paper. And I was having a good time for most of the night. The Gordon versus Pimblett fight was very fun as well. And while I didn't think the the main event was quite as horrendous as Dana White thought it was, perhaps a bit of a cold note to leave off the show. It was a bit of a mixed bag and probably a pay-per-view that most of us will be forgetting.
Well, afterwards, Dana White, in addition to making the new light heavyweight title fight for UFC 283 next month in Brazil, he added that they are aiming to do Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman in London at UFC 286. So after making such a big deal about how they're scouting stadiums, he just said, the weather. I don't like running when the weather could cause a problem. So there you go. Because the weather is a new anomaly to deal with. Like a couple months ago, like the weather wasn't a thing. So he realized one day, you know what? It rains some places, so we can't do a stadium.
He spends too much time in Nevada. He's not used to it anymore.
He all but confirmed Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo for March 4th. And then got very upset when he was said, "I never said that Conor McGregor was going to fight Michael Chandler." So he shut that one down in terms of being a definitive, regardless. But those are some of your notes coming out of things. Our next card, the final one of the year that I know Erik will be watching intently, features Sean Strickland against Jared Cannonier, as well as Damir Ismagulov against Arman Sarukian in the top two fights. And then they get several weeks off. They'll kick off the year with Kelvin Gastelum and Nasruddin Imavov at the UFC Apex. And then the next time we'll be here is the weekend of January 21st when they go to Brazil, which now has Glover Teixeira, Jamal Hill, and the fourth fight between Devison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno. How many fights will they have in their career? Will they hit 7?
Man. I think a best of 7 series may be on the table here between the two.
Like once you get to 5, you got to go to 7. I mean,
definitely
to do it. Like once you hit 5, it's like we're not slowing down until we hit 7. We've got to do it. Given this flyweight division, I think a decent chance they make it to 7.
Oh, there's so many great fighters in the flyweight division that I'd love to see some of them get a title shot to shake up the division, but I can't say with any positivity that this will actually be the final fight between Devison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno. And hey, I'm looking forward to the fight, despite the fact that it's happened 4 times in a row now for Figueiredo, at least.
They've been good fights. Like, yeah, I'm not complaining either. Some other ones on that card: Gilbert Burns against Neil Magny, Jessica Andrade against Lauren Murphy, and the Eric Marcotte fight of the night: Ihor Potera versus Mauricio Shogun Hua.
Oh my God!
We were spared your fight with Oven St. Preux and Alexander Gustafsson.
Yeah, we're getting something far worse. I mean, I love Shogun. But I don't love watching Shogun fight anymore. It's either going to be very sad or very boring in all likelihood. I don't even like to see his name on the lineup anymore.
Well, he is coming into Brazil. He's winding things down, and he's coming off losses to Paul Craig and the aforementioned Oven St. Preux. So we will see what Shogun has in store in the year 2023. It'll be something to behold. As always, on these shows, we open it up to your questions, those that are joining us in the live chat, and we always get the most in-depth questions on these shows from Brandon from New Jersey, who wants to know, good afternoon, Erik. Did you finish that Dr. Umar interview yet?
So, John, I know you're familiar with the sensation of Brandon from New Jersey sliding into your DMs and sending you complete insanity and regularity.
It's a given on a daily basis.
Brandon has a habit of sending me videos of Dr. Umar Johnson and Buster Rhymes, and I'd never watch any of them, so I can't actually respond. But for anyone who's curious out there, you can take a peek into the mind of Brandon from New Jersey and look up Dr. Umar Johnson yourself.
Well, there you go. A paid commercial here from Brandon from New Jersey, which we will gladly accept from the man himself. But there you go. That's going to wind down our UFC coverage for this year. Quite the year in mixed martial arts. So, Erik, we want to thank you as always for stepping in here, joining us. All your great reports on the site. You can catch his whole rundown of UFC 282 up on the site. And of course, we have a few more fight cards this year, including that Ryzen Bellator card that's happening on New Year's Eve in Japan. Do you think that one's going to get a lot of attention, or do you feel it's going to kind of just come and go? Because Bellator is in such an interesting spot, especially with that CBS card next year. Like, it seems time to make a big move for them, where I feel their profile has diminished so much over these couple of years.
I agree completely. It feels like Bellator doesn't get even a bit of the traction that they were maybe even 4 years ago. I don't think this card's going to be a huge deal. Listen, the Rise in New Year's Eve shows, they're always kind of crazy and fun. I might actually end up watching it, but it's like New Year's Eve is a tough day to run, I think. Even if the time zones don't completely match up with ours, of course, it's always one where it's like, is this what I want to be doing all night?
Is it, if I'm not mistaken, like it's, because it's in Japan, it would be the day of New Year's Eve, but I think are they airing it live on Showtime, or are they airing it on delay later? I think they're airing it that night, like at 8 p.m. or something on New Year's Eve, I think. But don't quote me on that.
I have absolutely no clue, but these Rise in New Year's Eve shows often go like 50 hours, so perhaps it'll just air at New Year's Eve for every time zone.
Let's quickly look this up if we have a start time for this on New Year's Eve. Oh, of course we don't, but it's happening on the 31st, so look out for that. Some very good fights on this card, but I don't know if this one is going to capture the mixed martial arts audience as a whole. The CBS card, I'm more interested to see like what kind of interest there is in non-UFC MMA on a big stage, especially with Fedor and Bader, which I know you've just been counting down the days for since their last fight.
Okay, so I want you to copy and paste everything I just said about Shogun and replace the name Shogun with the name Fedor, and it will be the exact same thing. Hey, I always root for Fedor. It'd be a beautiful end to his career to win the Bellator heavyweight title in his final fight, but I don't know if that's on the cards.
All right, that's going to wrap it up, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for the UFC 282 post show. You can find Erik on Twitter, but more importantly, in the Discord. The man lives there. You can always hit him up with your Dr. Umar interviews, or with Dark Souls 3 if he is engaging in that as well. As the chat room tells me, I feel like our whole chat room is just inside jokes about Erik that I try and navigate. That's the fun of this show.
That is mostly the case. I can't believe we just got a Dark Souls 3 reference from John Pollock on a post show. A truly monumental day.
That's it. Monday night, Way and I will be back with Rewind to Raw. Did you watch any Deadline or Final Battle on Saturday, Erik?
I watched Final Battle. I haven't been able to catch anything else yet just due to time, but I'll probably watch everything throughout the weekend. The Briscoes FTR match was phenomenal.
Yeah, pretty incredible match that they had. You can catch Way and Kate's review on the Post Wrestling Cafe, and Braden and Davey of Poison Rana have their Deadline post show up on the site now, so you can catch up on all the major events from this past weekend. And that will do it for us. Thanks to everyone for joining us live, and that concludes the UFC 282